It's Wednesday, October 8th, and this is your first ever TNM Sports Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. TNM Sports, just a couple of brothers hanging out talking about what's going on in sports, focusing on the NFL this week and MLB playoffs. Looking at, can the Panthers stay healthy? Are the Panthers going to go far? How far can they go without a healthy backfield? Pats rolled the Bengals. Peyton breaks 500. Russell Wilson lights up Washington on Monday night. And then we've got MLB playoffs, ALCS preview, NLCS preview, who we think's going to the World Series, and a lot more on this show. So first off, let's talk NFL Week 5. Panthers bounce back after two terrible weeks against the Ravens and the Steelers. The Panthers bounce back in a big way against the Chicago Bears on Sunday. So, Matt, what stood out the most to you about the Panthers on Sunday?
Well, TJ, I just think the second half, the Panthers really got going offensively and defensively. I just think that it's going to take both sides of the ball playing like that for us to go far, especially when we're not running the ball well. Like you mentioned, we're down in running backs. And I think it was just a big win. I would argue that it was a must-win. I think if you lose 3 in a row and you be down, I think it was a big win because we were down, early pretty big, and we were able to fight back, in the second half. And Cam looked good, defense looked good. The running backs did enough. They didn't, light up the stats, but they did enough. And so I just think the balance, in the second half of the team and just the way that we looked in the second half is what stood out to me. So you put the first half behind you, you go to the second half, and we did what we needed to do to get the win, and it was a good win for the team. And, it was just, what we needed to do. So
I agree with that for sure. One thing that stood out to me the most was after falling down 21-7, the offense bounced back in the 2-minute offense right at the end of the first half, got 7 points. I was talking to my wife on the way home from the beach. We were having to listen to it on the radio. And what jumped out the most to me about that was they picked up the pace. The offense got rolling. Oh, yeah. Cam was getting the ball out quick. And I just think that when your running game isn't working, you've got to just put the team on the shoulders of your quarterback, let him do what he's got to do, and make those big plays. One thing that has stood out to me, though, that I would like to see improve is the struggles of the offensive line. And one way to, if your offensive line is struggling, one way to kind of build that confidence and protect your quarterback is the short, quick passes. And I think I would like to see the Panthers go to more of the up-tempo offense and the short, quick passes that were successful there at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. Let's talk a little bit about on the same note, let's talk about the health at running back. You've got your top 3 guys out. You're signing guys off the street to be a running back. But in order for the Panthers to go far, I think that getting Stewart back, getting Williams back, getting Tolbert back is going to be key. And another area that's really jumping out to me with this Panthers team is Cam rushing the ball. For his career, Cam averages 7.3 rushing attempts per game. Through 4 games this year, he's only averaging 3.5 rushing attempts per game. He's only rushed the ball 14 times. Mm-hmm. And when Cam Newton's your quarterback, I love the fact that he's throwing the ball more and being very efficient with the ball and protecting the football. But you've got to get him running. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. The running game is something that I think that, we pulled out the win Sunday, but in the long run, as you said, we're just not going to be able to do what we want to accomplish. And what would be the ultimate goal would be the Super Bowl. And we're definitely not going to be able to accomplish that without a running game. And like you said, we're just signing guys off the practice squad, off the street. And we're trying to, I think our organization's trying to do what they can. You're down your top 3 running backs, and so you got to pull from somewhere. And I think Chris Obadiah could be, if we continue to have health problems, I think he could eventually be, not a fantastic running back, but I think he could kind of hold down the fort. He did pretty good for the Browns last year when they were needing some running backs. And so I think he could, potentially be somebody that we might could count on. But, getting those running backs back and then Cam back to 100%, that's going to be huge. It's kind of disheartening, as a Panthers fan to watch Cam not be able to play in his element, if you will. You're used to seeing Cam just, even when he's not having rushing attempts, just being able to run around and break tackles, break out of sacks, and it's not the same watching the Panthers and them not having that. And so him getting back to full strength, which I heard this week that he's going to be pretty close to 100%, still not 100, but definitely getting him back to just the normal version of Cam is going to help our offense and that offensive line out a lot, because even though if they do break down on a play, he might can scramble out and, So I think getting him healthy is going to be the biggest thing. And then, that offensive line, I think they'll come along. They lost a good number of pieces last year, and so I think they'll come along. Because, they've shown flashes of being good this year. Even in the second half, they played pretty well. It's just they got to be more consistent. And so I think Cam getting healthy is just the key to all that. And, just keeping playing good defense and keep playing, Panthers football and that smash mouth offense and stopping you on defense. And so, if we can get all those things in order, I think the Panthers will have a solid season. Possibly even win the South with the way it's looking this year. It's looking like it was down from what we thought it was going to be. And so I think if they can do all those things, I think they will be able to, win. They got a tough game coming up this week, the Bengals, and we'll talk about them coming up here. But even though, they did lose to the Patriots pretty bad, that's going to be, a tough game that we're going to have to come in and play 100% like we did in the second half. We're not going to be able to get down 21-0, I feel like, and come back on the Bengals. So
that is true. That is a very good point. One other thing that I want to comment on before we wrap up this little bit about the Patriots, and we'll get to the Bengals and Pats game, is you look at the Panthers from a year ago, and we hired Dave Gettleman, which in my opinion is a phenomenal hire, and this offseason we let go of Steve Smith. We lost all the wide receivers, and I think the jury is still out on the new wide receiver core. But the one bright spot that I've seen, and I think this was a brilliant move, draft night, I was absolutely on top of the world, was picking up the big man outside Kelvin Benjamin. So far through 5 games, he's got 24 receptions for 367 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, and even with some drops and things like that, which is obvious because he's a rookie. That's gonna happen.
He's a young rookie too.
He's a very young rookie. That's the 100% true. Just that threat of having 6'5" in the end zone, that to me is huge. In the Bears game, there was a play where the Panthers were down low. You had trips to the right, Kelvin on the left, and Cam threw it up for him. Kelvin didn't make the catch, but he drew pass interference. That's going to happen more times than not with 6'5" in the red zone. So personally, I love Steve Smith when he was here, but the more I look at the move, the more I feel like it was more of a personnel move than a money move. The money, I think it only saved the Panthers like $2 or $3 million.
I think just one.
Or one. I don't know the exact number there, but I think it was a personnel move, and I've said this before. It was the best move for the team and for Steve Smith. Now, would I like to see Smitty come back and retire as a Panther? Absolutely. I think you can't discount what he did for 11 years. But like you said, this team's built around playing good defense, getting takeaways that they did in the second half. They hadn't been doing that, and just running the ball and then when Cam has to, making a play. And so, next week the Panthers have a tough Bengals team. But I think that we saw what they need to do to beat those teams on a team like them on Sunday night in the Patriots game. The Patriots absolutely rolled the Bengals on Sunday night. And, when everyone was kind of counting Tom Brady and Belichick out, they come out and do what, Tom Brady and Belichick do. They come out and torch the Bengals for 43 points. Brady gets him a couple of touchdowns. He starts hitting his tight ends again. And, they're 3-2. They've got it. The Pats have a big game this week against the Bills, who are also 3-2. Surprise, surprise. And, they just really looked like the Patriots of old. Gronkowski had an interesting quote after the game. He said, "Hey, we made Tom Brady look like Tom Brady this week." Yeah. And, one thing about Tom Brady, and I hate saying this, but Tom Brady does more with less talent around him than I've ever seen a quarterback do. I mean, Think about the greats. Think about, Joe Montana. He had Jerry Rice to throw to, and he had, the great tight ends and things like that. Think about Elway, he had the great running games around him when he won his Super Bowls with Terrell Davis, and he had Shannon Sharp and Ed McCaffrey and all those guys.
And Peyton Manning now.
Yeah. The Broncos are stacked. Yeah. And I mean, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas. But what about that game, Matt, stood out to you the most?
Well, I told one of my friends, I said, there's no way the Bengals are beating the Patriots tonight. I told him before the game, I said, Tom Brady had a bad game last week. I said, it's not happening again. I said, he's going to come out ready to play. And I said, I'm about 99% sure that he will have a good game. And not only that, but that they will win the game. They did just that. But the one thing that stood out to me was the offensive line for the Patriots. They've had some questions. They're really young. They traded away, I think his name's Logan Mankins. Mankins. And, that was, people were like, well, that's kind of weird because he's a Pro Bowl offensive lineman and you're getting this tight end that not many people know much about. He's not been in the league, so why make that trade? He did good. He, complimented Gronk and Peyton Manning, Tom Brady well. But I think the offensive line really stood out to me, and also Darrelle Revis. He brought the island back. He shut down A.J. Green about as good as you can shut down A.J. Green. Yeah, he had a touchdown in garbage time, but if you remember, that wasn't on Darrelle Revis. Darrelle Revis got hurt the very next play, but lo and behold, A.J. Green scores a touchdown. So I think that kind of, solidifies their defense there with him. And then that offensive line, I think they had almost 200 yards or over 200 yards maybe rushing. Something they haven't had this year. And so I think you give Tom Brady, he doesn't have to have, the great targets. I mean, he has in the past had great targets, but he doesn't have to have that to be great. You give him a good offensive line, a decent running game, and a good defense, and he's going to make it work. So, that's really what stood out to me, other than Tom Brady, obviously, just the offensive line and the defense with Darrelle Revis and all of that. And like you said, they got a good matchup with the Bills coming up. We'll see what the Bills have. I mean, they've played pretty good. They've switched quarterbacks to Kyle Orton, and although he's not going to put up the huge numbers, I think he can, kind of stabilize that offense more. Sammy Watkins is kind of coming out of his shell a little bit and getting healthy and showing you what he's got. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think I would have to take the Pats in it just because, the way they're starting to roll, and I'm still not a firm believer in the Bills, but I think it will be a pretty good game, and, we'll see. And then, like we've said with the Bengals, they got, the Panthers coming up, and I think that will also be a good game, I think. Too bad we don't have them in primetime, right? They're not very good in primetime, but, we'll see, and we'll see what next week holds. It starts tomorrow, so.
That is true. Speaking of the Bengals in primetime, I know Andy Dalton's only in his, fourth year, something like that in the league. But just here's Andy Dalton's career numbers in primetime. He's 2-5, and by primetime I mean Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night games, or the playoffs. He's 2-5 with a completion percentage of 56%. He's thrown for 1,455 yards, which is only 207 yards a game, 3 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So he's averaging less than a touchdown a game and around an interception and a half per game. Numbers like that aren't going to be what cuts it, and you don't see these Bengals taking the next step until they can figure out how to win when the lights are on the brightest. I mean, you look at Brady, you look at Elway again, you look at Montana, when the lights or Troy Aikman, any of the greats, and when the lights were the brightest, that's when they were the best. And one quarterback that's also kind of sketchy in that, but also puts up huge numbers is Peyton Manning. And Sunday Peyton Manning became just the second quarterback to eclipse the 500 touchdown mark, which is unbelievable. I mean, he just put up stupid yards. What was it 476, 73 yards, 4 touchdowns? Just doing what Peyton Manning does. But it is September or October now, and for me, while Peyton is great in the regular season, it always seems to, when postseason rolls around, Peyton doesn't always have his best numbers. But 500 touchdowns, that's unbelievable. I saw a stat on TV the other day that in order for Peyton to, at his current pace, in order for him to eclipse 600 yards or 600 touchdowns, he would have to play until 2016. He'd be 40 years old. It'd be like week 5 of 2016 when he eclipsed 600 yards. Do you think that, or 600 touchdowns? Do you think that 600 touchdowns is out of the question for Peyton Manning?
I do. I do. Maybe not out of the question, because he's Peyton Manning. Regular season, he's great. And maybe he might prove me wrong, but you gotta think he's gonna go downhill sometime. He's not gonna be great forever, obviously. But I wouldn't say out of the question. I tend to think if he wins the Super Bowl this year, he's done. But like you said, he doesn't perform well. I wouldn't say well. He has good games, but they're not Peyton Manning-esque games, and they're not good enough to. Obviously, he's only won one championship. So, but I do think that if they win the championship this year or next year, he would be gone. I think, but and he considered retirement a little bit this year. He said, if the doctor didn't clear him to be 100%, he was probably going to retire then. So I think he's close to retirement. So I wouldn't say 600 is out of the question, but I would say I don't see it. But he's Peyton Manning. In the regular season, he throws unlike anybody. I'll always say I think he's the best regular season quarterback of all time. It's just like you said, if you can't perform in the bright lights in the playoffs, then can you be considered one of the best of all time? Well, I think he is one of the best, but can you be considered the best of all time? So, back to your question, like I said, it's not out of the question, but I would say there's about a 20% chance of it happening.
Awesome. Now, going from Peyton Manning to the quarterback that he faced last year in the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson had a ball game Monday night against the Redskins. Now, you can say that, it's against the Redskins, and, the Redskins defense is what it is. But Russell Wilson, this is the guy's third year. Everybody counted him out. He was third-round draft pick. And just his numbers from Monday night were he rushed for a career-high 122 yards, which was also a Monday Night Football record for rushing yards by a quarterback. Not flashy passing numbers, 18 to 24, very efficient, like Russell Wilson always is. 201 yards, couple touchdowns. The Seahawks sitting at 3-1, kind of doing what the Seahawks do. Just winning games, running the ball, playing good defense, and Russell's just holding it down, doing what Russell Wilson does. Being consistent and willing his team to win. How far do you think that Seattle goes this year if this team stays healthy?
I think you gotta say Super Bowl for right now. There's other teams in the NFC, obviously, that could win it, could be in the Super Bowl, but I think right now you gotta say the Seahawks are the favorite. Like you said, they play good defense. They run the ball well. Beast Mode's playing really well, and it's interesting because he considered retirement as well, so I'm sure they're glad he came back. Their defense is quietly, having another really good year. They did stumble against the Chargers, but the Chargers are a really good team, and you're not going to win them all. Even the teams that, went 16-0, the Patriots, they didn't win Super Bowl, so you can't win them all. So I think right now you got to say they're the favorite in the NFC. Like you said, Russell Wilson's only like the fourth quarterback to run for 100 yards, pass for 200, and have a running touchdown and a passing touchdown. I think he's only like the fourth running back to do that. Last to do it was Cam Newton against the Falcons in 2012. So, like you said, the way they're built, they don't have to have this fantastic, running back or quarterback that puts up Peyton Manning numbers. They just had to have somebody that's going to go out there and when the defense makes a big stop, put points on the board, and he does that. And so, obviously I would like to see the Panthers, emerge in the NFC and win, but I honestly think that if the Seahawks get the home field advantage, like they probably will, I don't think anybody goes in there in the playoffs and beats them. So somebody's going to have to wrestle that, beat them a couple times and get that home field advantage away, because somebody like the 49ers or the Cardinals or somebody can get that home field advantage then and force the Seahawks to go on the road and play a game, then it might be a different story. But I just don't see them with that 12th man and that home field advantage. I don't see it happening this year. And I mean, they've done a good job of keeping the nucleus and just keeping the center of their team intact. Now there's going to come a time where they got to pay some people, and you might see some. I mean, you saw Golden Tate kind of go his own way this year, but they're keeping that nucleus in there and centering it down, and they're doing it right. They're building from the ground up, and that's something that a lot of teams that struggle, don't do. They try to go out and get these big free agents, and it just doesn't work out. But the Seahawks have done it the right way, and they're poised to have, be NFC contenders and Super Bowl contenders for 4 or 5 years down the road.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's in the words of the great Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And no one's really shown me that they can beat the Seahawks if they're playing their way. The Chargers did, and at the time that was surprising to me, but the Chargers are better than I personally thought they were going to be going into this season. Let's go real quick. We're going to go through the Week 6 games. Just take your pick. First off, Thursday night game, we got Indianapolis and we've got Houston. Andrew Luck's playing great. Houston's got the big man, J.J. Watt. I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I like Indianapolis, man. I like the offense right now. I think Andrew Luck's playing great, and I like Indianapolis. What about you?
Well, I'll just say I like Andrew Luck, and I think that gives you my answer.
I think Matt likes Andrew Luck because he resembles Andrew Luck when he has his beard. Pittsburgh and Cleveland, another big game Sunday. First matchup of the year. Cleveland was down big, and they came back. Brian Hoyer seems to be the new comeback kid of the league. The game's in
I think
it's in Cleveland. The game's in Cleveland, and part of me, I like the Browns. I like what they're doing. I like Brian Hoyer. Pittsburgh's been really streaky this year. They didn't impress me against Jacksonville last week, so I'm going with the upset. Cleveland at home.
I gotta go Pittsburgh there. I just think that they'll find a way to win. I will be pulling for the Browns because who doesn't like to pull for underdog like that? Which I don't even know they'll be the underdog or not, but I like the Browns there, and so but the next game would be the Patriots and the Bills, and there again I've already kind of picked that one. I would definitely take the Patriots. The Bills are another feel-good story, but I think that the Patriots will end up winning that game and ultimately winning the division.
Yeah, I don't see Kyle Orton being the answer long term for the Bills. He had a great game, his first game out against Detroit, throwing for over 300 yards and stuff. But the AFC, it's Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's division to lose. I feel like you say that every single year, but I got to go Pats. Even on the road, I think Buffalo's going to be rocking, but I like the Pats. Panthers-Bengals. Panthers are going on the road to a tough environment against a very good Cincinnati team. I think this would be a statement game. It's going to be close. It depends on what offense shows up and what defense shows up. I see this being like a 7-10 type game, or even like that San Francisco game on the road last year. It was 10-9. the Panthers I feel like the Panthers got the better kicker in Gano. If their defense plays like they should, I like the Panthers, in a 10-9 type game.
Well, this is a hard game for me to pick. I mean, I like the Panthers, and I like what they can do when they play well. But are they going to play well? That's the main question. The Bengals are coming off of a tough loss. I think the Bengals will bounce back here. Being a Panthers fan, that's hard for me to say, but I just don't know. If we can beat the Bengals with no running game. I think Jonathan Stewart is supposed to be back, but how limited is he going to be? So I think I got to go with the Bengals here. I just think that they're gonna. I think that in order for us to win, it's going to have to be a low-scoring game, but I think they'll put up points on our defense. With AJ Green and we've had trouble stopping the run. I mean, last week we did decent, but they got one of the best running backs in the league, so I got to go Bengals there, TJ.
All right, Jaguars at Titans. Now, I've not really followed either of these teams a whole lot. I think Jake Locker is hurt for the Titans.
I think he came back last week unless he got hurt again.
Did he come back?
I
okay.
Think so.
Is Bortles still starting for Jacksonville? I mean, does anybody really know anything about these games? Sorry, Caleb. I know you're a big Titans fan. I'd probably go with the Titans here. It's kind of like the better of the two awful teams in the AFC South. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about either of those, but I'd go Titans just off the top of my head.
And I'll go Jags there. I think Bortles is going to come out and play good. They need to get a win just to kind of stay kind of like above water, I guess. And I mean the Titans need to win too, but I've watched a few of the Titans plays, and I don't really see much from them or Jacksonville one, but I do think Jacksonville does get the win because I mean this is going to be one of the few games that they can actually win. So I think they're going to go out and Bortles, he's a good quarterback, so I think I'll take Jacksonville.
Alrighty then. Just a couple more games. We're not going to pick all of them. Dallas, Seattle. It's at Seattle. I don't trust Dallas on the road. But one thing about Dallas that I've noticed this year, they're running the ball a heck of a lot more, a heck of a lot better. But, again, it's hard to pick against the champs at home. I'm going Seattle.
Yeah, I got to go Seattle there, too. I think the defense is just too much there. And my bold prediction, I don't know if it's bold or not, but just my prediction is that Tony Romo is back to his old ways. He throws 2 picks, and they're both to Richard Sherman. And then Richard Sherman will have an interesting post-game interview. And so I'm going to pick Seattle there in a blowout. I think it's not going to be close. And then last game here that we're going to pick, Giants and Eagles. This game is very interesting to me. I think that the Giants are kind of back to their old self, back to the way they used to play. Their offensive line's playing pretty good, which was a big issue last year. They've got Odell Beckham back. He's got his first touchdown pass. Manning's playing well. Their running backs are playing well with Williams and Jennings. And so I'm going to go with kind of the upset pick here and go the Giants. I think that the Eagles will struggle on offense, and I think the Giants will win a close one.
I want to pick the Eagles here, mainly because I have LaShawn McCoy on my fantasy team, and he has been absolutely killing me this year because he's not been playing up to, LaShawn McCoy's standards. But, the Giants are adjusting well under their new offensive coordinator, that West Coast offense. That, to me, fits Eli Manning perfectly. Getting Beckham back, I think that opens the door up for Victor Cruz to put up some bigger numbers. And, I think the G-men go into Philadelphia and get it done. You might start hearing the boo birds a little bit in Philly. You know how those fans like to boo their team. I've never seen a fan base boo that much, but hey, that's one thing about Phillies fans. They're loyal and they're gonna stick with you through thick and thin. But if things are a little thin, you're gonna hear all about it. Just a couple other notes from the NFL. Adrian Peterson's trial is set for December 1st. He pleaded not guilty to child abuse. If you want to call it that, I call it spanking his kid. Some people say that the pictures are pretty bad. And if he did go overboard, I suspect that due process will show all that. But right now, I mean, I can recall as a kid getting whippings with a switch and a belt, things like that. And I think I turned out just fine.
It's looking like he's going to be out for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, Peterson's probably out for the rest of the year. And with Peterson out, what do the Vikings do?
They lose games. That's what they do.
You heard it here. Switching gears a little bit, we're gonna switch to talking about baseball, and this is my favorite time of year for baseball. The season's long, 162 games. It's all coming down to a couple of series. Baseball's down to its final four. In the American League. And I never thought I'd be saying this in 100 years, but in the American League, you've got the Orioles and the Royals in the ALCS, both of who took down some very, considered heavyweights. They went and played Detroit and the Angels respectively and swept them, which to me was a huge surprise. I love what the Royals are doing, but I did not expect them to sweep the mighty Angels. And then in the National League, I feel like you say this every year, you've got the Cardinals and you've got the Giants, who, again, the Giants, they started off hot. They kind of had that big slump, let the Dodgers back in, come steal the division from them, and here we are, Cardinals, Giants again. But to get to that point, the Cardinals had to beat a familiar foe a few times, and that was Clayton Kershaw. And, for me, Kershaw put up some ridiculous numbers this season. And yet, come playoff time, he's good for about six innings. And then in that seventh inning, it's like the Cardinals just figure him out. Over he's the first Dodger pitcher to lose four straight playoff starts. Just some numbers, he has a 5+. He's 1-5 with a 5+ ERA in the postseason, compared to a 98-49 record with a 2.48 ERA in the regular season. Why do you think Kershaw struggles so much? And in particularly, why does he struggle so much against the Cardinals in the postseason?
Well, I think it's just a matter of the Cardinals have his number. Most teams, go into Clayton Kershaw and they see Clayton Kershaw and they're like, well, we might as well just mark this one in the L column today. I think the Braves did that. His one playoff win was against the Braves, and their struggles in the playoffs, and they'll probably continue. But back to the Cardinals, I just think that they're not scared of him. I think that they go in there thinking they're going to win. Unlike most teams, they go in there and they say, well, it's Clayton Kershaw. We've done it before. We can do it again. And I think they're just, they're not scared of him. And they know what to do when it comes postseason time, and that's do what you have to do to win. If it's hit a 3-run home run in the 7th off Kershaw, they got people that'll step up and do that. And I think with Kershaw, I think it's just a thing of, he's so good in the regular season. Well, why can't he be that good in the postseason? But the postseason's just a different ball game. It's more pressure. And he knows he struggles. He might say he doesn't, keep up with his stats, but he knows coming into this year he hasn't done good in the playoffs, even if he doesn't know his exact stats. And so I think it's just more pressure on him, and he lets the pressure get to him. Like you said, he pitches good for 6 innings, and then the pressure builds. It's a pretty close game. I think it was 2-0 yesterday, and he gets in a little bit of trouble and leaves. I think it was a curveball or was it a changeup? I'm not sure. One of those two, hanging, and see you later. And then that was the game. And I said this before that run support hadn't really been there for him in the postseason, but like you said, 2-0 lead in the 7th inning with Clayton Kershaw. You expect to win that 9 out of 10 times, and he hasn't been able to do that. And that leads me to say, well, is he worth that big contract? Because you can go undefeated in the regular season all day, which he didn't, but you could, and lose in the postseason. And have you really accomplished anything for your team? Yeah, you got them to the postseason, but if you can't get them farther, then. But it's more than just Kershaw for them. They have a whole dugout full of big egos. And throughout the whole season, they butted heads, and I just feel like they never gel. And in the MLB postseason, it's those teams that play well as a team and gel together as a team that you ultimately see, winning. The uh, Kansas City. I don't think anybody in the world would say they have the most talent. Even more talent than the Angels or some other teams they played, but they have gelled as a team. They believe in themselves and they can win. The Red Sox last year, they weren't the most talented team by any stretch, in my opinion, but they gelled together. They had the whole beard thing going on, and they just let that gel them. The whole Boston Strong, and so it's the teams that gel together, and I just don't think the Dodgers are gelled as a whole. I think they're too much of an individual type team, with the biggest payroll in the MLB this year. So that's my opinion.
And yeah, you've got to think, back to the Yankees teams of the mid 2000s, the 2006, 2007, 2008, when the Yankees had all these big payrolls with A-Rod and Jeter and Teixeira and all these things, and they only had one ring to show out of it. You can't buy championships, and in this post-steroid era in baseball, it's becoming more and more clear. There for a while you had the Rays who kind of grew their own talent and were successful during the regular season, made it to World Series in 2008. You've got now St. Louis. They've grown a lot of their talent, and Kansas City. They're growing a lot of their talent. From their farm system, and I mean, even your Braves. Now, granted, their season didn't end the way they wanted to, but the Braves for probably the past 20, 25 years have grown their own talent. So you're kind of seeing that paradigm shift in the major leagues that, hey, a $200 million payroll isn't necessarily what it takes to win championships. That's correct. And, I like the Cardinals a lot. I like what they do in the postseason because regardless of the regular season, they win the games they have to win in September to clinch their division. They win games in the playoffs, and they make it to the World Series. And they may not always win, but they make it to the World Series. On the other hand, in the National League, you got the Giants, who, in my opinion, looked extremely impressive against the Nationals. I personally like the Nationals going into the playoffs. I like Bryce Harper, which he had a phenomenal series, hitting 3 home runs. He was the first player under the age of 22 to do that, or under the age of 23 to do that. And he's also got the most home runs by anyone under the age of 23. He tied with Miguel Cabrera, Mickey Mantle, Andrew Jones with 4. In the postseason. And, I think that the Giants, they really impressed me. They just kind of go out there and get wins. And bouncing back from that Game 3 loss, which they lost on a thrown away ball on a bunt. They bounce back and they're resilient. I'm excited. I feel like the NLCS is going to probably go 6 or 7 games. I like the Giants in it just because, you mentioned the last year's Red Sox, and I kind of get that feel from the Giants. They just look like they're going out there. They believe in each other. They've got each other's back. They've got some really strong pitching with Madison Bumgarner and Lincecum and Vogelsong. And, I mean, even Jake Peavy isn't looking too bad, and I hate to say that because he's not really done much at all for the Red Sox. But I like the Giants. I'm going to say in 6 because I think that Game 7 would be in St. Louis, correct? With them being a division winner. So I like the Giants in 6. Just mainly because, when you're in the postseason, it's not about who the better team is. It's about that team chemistry and that and just believing in one another.
Well, and I'll go with the Cardinals in this one. I mean, I think that both teams have good team chemistry. They both believe in one another. But here's my opinion and why I will ultimately pick the Cardinals. 1, because my buddy Lucas from college, he's a Cardinals fan, so I got to pick the Cardinals for him. But 2, I think they both have good pitching. I think the pitching's about even, especially in the starting rotation. You're gonna have a good Game 1 matchup with Wainwright and Bumgarner. I think Wainwright will win that one. But Bumgarner's a heck of a pitcher. But I just think in the lineup, and like you said, it's not always the best team that wins, but I think in the lineup, I would take St. Louis's lineup over the Giants lineup right now. And I think I'm going to go with the Cardinals to get to the World Series and even eventually win the World Series too. So even though that's a little premature, that would be my prediction on that.
Wow, Cardinals to win it all. I mean, you got to like the Card. I mean, you can say that. I do think whoever comes out of the NL will take the World Series because you've got experience on their side. And another reason I'm going with the Giants is it's an even year. They won in 2010. They won in 2012. Here we are, 2014, and Giants are right there at it. Going to the American League, you got the Orioles and you've got the Royals. Gotta love this Royals team. I was watching the game against Oakland, and that just seemed to go on forever and ever. 7 stolen bases. They're bunting for base hits. They're okay with hitting a sacrifice fly. The Royals are a lot of fun to watch. But you got to go with the O's. I mean, they came through the gauntlet of the AL East, and I know you can say the AL East was down this year. But you faced the Yankees, you faced the Red Sox, even the Blue Jays now, the Rays. The Orioles are looking to me like the best team that's left in the American League side. And the thing is, the Orioles are doing it and the Royals too are doing it with a bunch of people that I've never even heard of. I would love the feel-good story of Kansas City to continue on, but I think the Orioles win in 7. Again, another hard-fought, long series, probably a couple extra inning games because that's just what the Royals like to do, but I like those in 7.
I'll again disagree on that one. I think that the Royals will win that game, that series in 5. I don't know. I just like the way that they're playing right now, and I like, like you said, the team chemistry there and the young excitement and I mean, right now I don't think you can pick against them when they're playing in Kansas City. That crowd is just rocking. They haven't had anything like this in a long time. And I just see them, I see that train rolling on one more round, but like I've said, it stops there. I don't see that young team being able to play a good Cardinals team that's been there in the World Series before. Last year they were there and they did get beat, but they know that most of the people on that team have that experience. They're playing their best baseball, and so I'll go Royals for now, but ultimately in the World Series I would take the Cardinals over the Royals there.
You heard it here. So according to myself, you've got a Giants O's black and orange World Series. According to Matt, you got the Midwest Showdown. The Battle of Missouri, Kansas City, and St. Louis. With that being said, one more story to kind of comment on that kind of hits close to home for me as a Red Sox fan. Yesterday, Josh Beckett announced at the age of 34 that he was retiring. And, for me, I'll think about the 2007 season. Beckett was just lights out in the postseason. Just a couple of numbers, career record 7-3 over 9 series in the postseason, a 3.07 ERA. In my opinion, Beckett is the best postseason pitcher of the past 15 years. I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head that was more impressive than him. But, you kind of hate to see Beckett go out the way that he did. I mean, he finally got his no-hitter this year, which is awesome. I mean, you'd think that before then he would have gotten that. But what stood out the most for you about Josh Beckett over his, illustrious career?
Like you said, just his play in the playoffs. Like I said with Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw was a great regular season pitcher. He is a great regular season pitcher, but it all matters what you do in the postseason. And, Josh Beckett was one of the ones that kind of helped bring the Red Sox back to relevance. He didn't win the first one. I don't think he was with them the first time, but he kind of not maybe brung them back, but kind of established that. And he was able to pitch good in the postseason for your Red Sox. So it is kind of sad to see him go, I guess you could say, but I think it was a good time. I think he was, even though he did get that no hitter, I think he was kind of on his way down, and so might as well get the no hitter and go out in style like that. I'm a little bit surprised, and I'm not sure, I might be wrong on this, but I'm surprised that he didn't go back and retire a Red Sox on like a one-day thing, and he might still can do that. I'm not sure. But if he's not going to do that, I would be surprised if he actually retires a Dodger, because he was only there for like, what, 3 years, and he was hurt for the majority of the time. So I would like to see him, go back and somehow retire as a Red Sox on a one-day contract or something, but he might be too late if he's already announced that. I don't know how that works. But yeah, I mean, he, like you said, just obviously his postseason would have to be what stands out. So, sad to see him go, but I think it was his time.
It definitely was his time, and I think back to the 2003 World Series. A lot of the memories that you have of Beckett are in that Red Sox jersey. I mean, he was 2-0 in the ALCS in 2007. The Sox were down 3-1 in that, and I think he may have pitched that Game 5. That kind of brought them back, but he won. But he won the MVP then. But 2003, winning World Series MVP as a 23-year-old kid, taking on the mighty Yankees, playing for the Florida Marlins. I mean, just the guts that it took for him to win that game. I believe it was Game 7 that he won.
Yeah.
It was a Game 7. But going out and shutting down that powerful Yankees lineup then, that was huge. But the trade that brought him, and a lot of people forget, that brought him and Mike Lowell from the Marlins to the Red Sox was just huge before that 2007 or 2006 season, whenever that was. I just think that, that 2017 was just phenomenal. I mean, Beckett won the ALCS MVP. Yeah. Lowell won the World Series MVP. So, I mean, that was a phenomenal trade. That was one of Theo's bright spots as GM of the Red Sox. I believe that about wraps it up for us today. This is TNM Sports. Hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll be back with you this time next week. Hope y'all have a great day.